And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey here on a crisp fall day from Macon, Georgia. Episode 5 of Season 4, Looking Back with Lynskey. And we have a very special guest today. Quite an impressive list of accomplishments. Columbus Hall of Famer, school board member, former president of the school board, alumni dad, founder of Columbus Connects, entrepreneur, from a family steeped in Miami history, a man of many talents. Please welcome, from the class of 1984, Mr. JB Aleman to the show. JB, appreciate you being here with us today.
John, thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful being here. I've been listening to the podcast since season 1. And when I saw that Mickey Maspons and Adrian Alfonso were there and I had still not yet been invited, well, I'm glad I'm finally here.
The time is right, my friend. And you know what they say, JB, you save the best for last.
Right.
So that's what we've done.
It's a great podcast. I enjoy it so much. I'll go on my morning walks and I think I've listened to about 90% of them.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think we all are happy. I mean, this was Melissa's idea, really. And it's become an oral history of Columbus High School. And, it's invaluable. And they're enjoyable, they're fun, and people learn things. So why not, right?
Absolutely.
So JB, we're a little bit different in age. We didn't quite overlap, but take us back to the Columbus of the early 80s, because you've got a unique perspective, being a student in the 80s, then being on the school board, having your sons there, So let's start at the very beginning. Describe your Columbus experience in the early to mid 80s.
Oh, it was perfection. I mean, it really was. Throughout the years, I've had a lot of speakers to Columbus Connect series, and one common thread that they say about Columbus is they were a boy when they came in and were a man when they left, or at least a young man. And that's exactly how I felt. I mean, those years of growth were just tremendous. The friendship, social, the hard work, everything that it took. It was just an incredible experience. And of course, the 80s is a little different than it is today. I came in as a very short, skinny freshman. I was terrified because I had heard about. Well, I think they say there was hazing back then. I don't know, but yes. So
I think we called it encouragement. JB.
So encouragement. So I came in that first class, in the homeroom, and I looked for the largest guy I could find. I said, I'm going to become his friend. And it was Carlos Avalos. Later on became a great offensive lineman, and so I took care of some protection right away. It ended up not being so bad, but I was prepared. But those years were amazing years. We had two state championship visits in 80 and then again in 82.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. I played officially I was on the 82 team. Only my position was left out. I didn't really get on the field.
To experience that, to watch it in 80, when my brother was playing, and then to be part of it in 82, to see guys like Alonzo and Mike Shula and Tim and all those guys, it had to be quite something.
Oh, it was amazing. Alonzo was just a man among boys. So happy we're going to have him in the lecture series coming in February, along with Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal. But he's finally, he's going to be back for that. But he was absolutely amazing. Mike Shula, what I remember the most about him was, obviously, as Don Shula's son, he knew more than the coaches. He really did. He knew the offense. And I remember how respectful he was to never, they would sometimes, I would overhear, they would sometimes ask him, Mike, what should we do here? What would we do? What would you do here? And then he would answer. But otherwise, he allowed them to be his coaches, and they were. So that was also just a fun part. And everything from the fun, the pep rallies, those are crazy, just letting boys be boys sometimes, so that we really had an amazing time. And then the friendship. I'm still friends with my Columbus friends are my best friends to this day. You have a few other friends that you've grown through life, but really that's the heart and soul. I ended up going to the University of Florida with some of them, and just all of them to this day we're best of friends. And you developed all of those in Columbus, and then the Marish brothers and what they did. I lost my dad right before my senior year, and for the Marish brothers, I was an above average student, but I was not really an athlete, not a well-known, kind of quiet, shy. And as they've always done, they've treated, all the students, the same way. And Brother Brady and Father Dennison contacted my mother and my grandparents, offered tuition reduction or free, to finish the year. They declined it. My grandparents were warehouse factory workers, but they said, no, we'll pay. And, but that was great. And from that point on, I was not very involved in campus ministry, but, so they got me to go to the very first encounter of senior year.
Okay.
And the last encounter that year, I was an encounter leader, which was the first time I had any type of leadership, role. And I looked at somebody asked me recently about, leadership and so forth. And I said, well, the first time I think I had an experience with that was senior year for being an encounter leader. And that was amazing. It was a great time for Columbus. A lot can happen when you lose your father at that age. And Columbus was there to catch me and make sure that I stayed in the right direction. For the most part, I did.
In the encounter, it's a tremendous program, no doubt about it. And people don't understand how a 17-year-old boy, how much they can benefit from those 3 days. It's an amazing thing. And we do a great job with it. Yes.
You spoke about seeing Columbus in different perspectives. My oldest is now a sophomore in college, but he was, I think we got it in during COVID year. He had not been very involved in campus ministry. I finally convinced him. I think it wasn't the full, they didn't sleep over because I think it was right after COVID year. So I think it was his senior year. And the first night that he came home, I kind of gently pushed him towards that. And the time he came home that first evening, he gave me a hug and say, thanks, Dad. Thanks for getting me to go. So that was a special moment as well.
There you go. A moment ago, you mentioned the Marish brothers and you've mentioned leadership. Talk about your principal at Columbus, Brother Edmund Sheehan, who is the epitome of what a Marish brother should be. You talk about quiet but strong leadership. No one exemplifies that better than Edmund Sheehan.
I think that he was a wonderful principal, quiet, as you said, quiet, but still the leader. Yeah. I've learned later on, as a student, you don't realize some of the impact, but later on I see, I think his only flaw was, I think he made some bad hires at some point.
He made some horrible hires. You're talking to one of them right now.
But outside of that, he's an amazing leader. I did not get a chance to work with him at the board level. He has not been, but I still, see him in the library and so forth. Love that all these brothers that taught us so long ago are still there, still providing, if not in the classroom or if not in an active role, they're still providing the overall presence to steer, keep that ship going in the right direction.
That's the right word, presence. It's a very important word. And Brother Kevin, his presence, that shadow looms large over Columbus High School.
I love Brother Kevin. I really enjoyed working with Brother Kevin on the board. He was the president when I was the school board chair, and he's to say he's difficult to work with is probably is probably taking it a little light, because he makes you prove everything. The answer is always no, starts out with no, but then you have to work, explain, and the moment that you get him to turn that gear and to say, this is a good idea, that very next morning, he's executing on it. So, I mean, Columbus has so much to thank Brother Kevin for, as, you know, one of the leaders, really changed the school in the last 20 years. And I just really enjoyed seeing him and working with him in a very different way. And you had to figure out how to get him to yes. And many, many times it was, John, will you talk to him about this? And David, talk to him about that. 2 or 3 board members. Let's get in his ear about this. And then finally, by the time I asked, he was all, well, he was ready to go. And so, but just
the key was to make him believe it was his idea all along. And then you were golden. You were great at that.
That's it. But really, once he decided this is the right thing to do, the execution was, lightning speed, really, to get that done. And so that was great. Just he lives and breathes to this day, Columbus,
and he always will, no doubt. So JB, you go to Gainesville after you graduate, and this I find to be very interesting. You got into computer science engineering and made a career in the IT field for over 20 years with Meridian Partners. But what I found out so interesting, you didn't know anything about computers, IT at all until you got to Gainesville. Go ahead and tell. We all end up in careers that we're not quite sure how we got there sometimes. And yours is a prime example of Columbus guys finding a way to do things. So tell us the story.
Right. That's it is funny. You can start this with, I'm so old that, and so I'm so old that the University of Florida was just offering computer science engineering. It was probably the first or second year that they offered that. But stepping back to my when I come into the University of Florida, I'm looking to be an electrical engineer. A lot of the Cuban American young men like me, your parents pretty much told you what to do. You're going to be a lawyer. I was going to be an electrical engineer. Knew nothing about electrical engineering. I just was told. So here I was working my way to electrical engineering. And the first 2 years, you take all the prerequisites, to get into the College of Engineering. And the second semester of my sophomore year, we take physics 2. I had 3 other friends that were all on the electrical engineering track, and one that I was very close. Well, I was close with all 3 of them, but academically, I worked with him a lot. Was Albert Leonard, who currently runs the K-Land football leagues and so forth. But Albert was also on the electrical engineering track. And we take physics 2, which is almost all electrical engineering. We absolutely hated it. We didn't get it. It didn't click. We're like, we're not going to be electrical engineers. While the other 2 friends, they were smart already. They ended up, going through a career and doing great. But Albert, we think, we have all these engineering prerequisites. We have to pick some type of engineering degree. What do we want to do? And Albert Leonard said, I took computer science with Miss Colmo back at Columbus, and I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So I literally had never taken a computer class before. This is now going to be my junior year of college, and that's how old I am, when I was going to take the first computer class that I've ever taken. Of course, kids now are 1 year old and they're working on tablets, and so forth. Yeah. But that's how it worked out. Albert Leonard told me about Miss Colmo's class, and I jumped into the computer science world. I liked it. I got a degree, and in the 90s, I was a hands-on programmer and developer, and really enjoyed it. And then I started my company, and I was probably in the field for really closer to 30 years. And I still am a little bit, with some of my clients in that arena, but I really, really enjoyed it.
Because to people our age, you're like cutting edge, because most of us struggle with computers, and you understand how the whole thing works, and you never really intended to do that. I think it's just one of those classic Columbus stories.
Right. Absolutely. For many things, my sons will, on social media or something, they'll tell me, Dad, do this, move me around. But when it comes to putting on the TV, connecting anything, putting anything together, it's, all right, Dad, you're home. We're having problems with this. So I'm like, this probably never happens, at this age.
No,
right.
That's a fact. It's usually the other way around.
Right. Yes.
So you have great friends from the class of '84. That's what we do at Columbus. And talk about, how you got involved so deeply at Columbus High School, how the whole school board started and everything else that rolled with it. There's always a beginning to something. Right. How did it begin for you?
Well, I like most everyone, when you go away, I went on and I had, you have your early years, you're finding employment, getting to work. You're not really thinking about Columbus that much. I think Columbus does a better job today of staying engaged with the younger alumni than they did back then. Yeah. So I was always a little bit in touch with Columbus, because one of my very close friends to this day is Flash Fernandez, class of '84. And he, early on, I believe it was like '88 or '89, he started coaching and teaching at Columbus. Yeah. So I stayed because I knew what was going on. I knew about the teachers. I remember always seeing Butch Diano and Chris McKeon. They'd come over to, Flash at some point. We had an apartment together, and they'd be there. So I stayed close. But then probably around the late '90s, then I grew not distant again, but I wasn't involved. And I think Flash was no longer there. So I lost a little bit of contact. And in or about 2007, I get a call from then development director, Juan Gomez. Okay. Juan, I had met at the University of Florida. He was he's
a Gator. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Gator. He's a Gator. And we met there, and we were very close. And, we came back, and he has a mechanical engineering degree, pretty interesting. He has a mechanical engineering degree, and his father and brother his father had a very good, a good company, and he decided that was not his calling. So he needed to make some money, and Flash Fernandez gets him a substitute teacher job at Columbus. And that's how it started. And at that point, he spends like the next 25, 30 years or so at Columbus. But he calls me when he had recently, I think he had just become the development director. The role had just started. And actually, kudos to him. That very first year, he came up with a few different ideas on reaching out to alumni. And part of that was the Mother's Luncheon, which actually started under the development. Now, rightfully so, it's under admissions. Yeah. The Mother's Luncheon. He asked me to create a networking events and to have folks come back to Columbus for networking events, just to try to get the alumni back on campus. And I thought, well, we have one or two networking events. It's going to end there. We have to have something of a draw. And that's when the Columbus Connects Leadership Lecture Series started. The idea being that we were going to have, speakers celebrate our own, but make it a productive night while wrapping before and after networking time to meet, talk, chat, whether it's social or business networking, whatever you'd like it to be. And that's still the process today. Yeah. There's an hour before, everybody gets together, talks. Then we have the prime event, and we have tremendous speakers to over the years that we've brought in, and we can get into that. And then of course it ends up with networking. But that was all the concept of that group that Juan created, which was the initial, what we call the alumni, the alumni. Now there's a new name for it now, but it's the alumni board, and it runs Food and Wine to this day. The big football games, the tailgates, and so forth, all run through there, including the Columbus Connects Leadership Lecture Series has always been through there. I'm not on that board right now, but it has traditionally been through them. That all started back then. So my involvement really kicked into another gear then. And then that alumni board, I chaired that alumni board, and they asked me, Brother Kevin asked me when some of the openings came up on the school board, Brother Kevin asked me to join the school board, and I headed the development committee there for 3 years. And then then at some point, Columbus this is incredible, but one of the policies of Columbus is a conflict of interest on the school board, and an active parent cannot be on the school board. And by the way, if you did that at just about any other school, you would have no school board members, because the parents are interested. I mean, it's just natural. They're interested in being in the know and involved and maybe changing some things when their child is at a particular school. At Columbus, we do not have that. And yet everybody still wants to support and help in every way that they can, including the school board. So that's very special. So what happens in and about 2013 is Tim Plummer's the school board chair at the time. Mm-hmm. And his son is an incoming freshman. And then I think it would have been the natural next selection, Mickey Maspons. And his son, same year, they lost them both. So I think I looked around, and Brother Kevin just said, JB, do you want to run the school board? Which was a surprise, a very big surprise to me. And I remember those first meetings. I was nervous. That's what's going to do. And I just said, I'm going to be prepared and I'm going to work hard. And I pretty much haven't stopped since. I remember those first meetings with, getting James Bernhardt after a few meetings came up to me, and he very honestly said, I didn't know if you were going to be any good at this. I wasn't sure about you. He goes, but you're doing an amazing job. And once he said that, that's it.
You get a vote of confidence from Jim Bernhardt, you've made it.
Absolutely. I always remind him about that too. And he doesn't need the accolades, but that was it.
I don't think people appreciate, or maybe not appreciate, but can't understand the amount of time that goes into being on the Columbus School Board. It's almost another job. And, you have a very busy life. Your wife, John, and her political career, which we want to talk about. How did you find time to juggle all that? And was there any hesitation about taking on that kind of responsibility?
No, there was no hesitation other than, can I do it? Those little, can I really do this? Can I do it? This is for Columbus. If I'm going to do it, I better do a good job. I gave it my all many times. Ever since, to be honest, I laugh at the amount of time that it takes for not just me, but a lot of the alumni that help Columbus, you and everything that we do is the amount of time that's dedicated to it. Yeah. We always said time, talent, and treasure, and time and talent are extremely important. And that board is less about your treasure. There's the money comes many different. The great Marcus Lemonis, Mario Suedas, the Moss family, what they've all done. But that board is a working board, and they're all active. They're all doing what they can to support. And that board for me is about time and talent and what you bring to the table. And the treasure comes through a different channel. Rather than many school boards across Dade County, it's pay to play.
Yeah, just right.
Here's a write the check, and now you're on the board. And what does the board actually do? Well, in this case, the Columbus board, which is not it does not run the school. The school is run by the president and the principal, but they set policy but do not get involved with the procedure. So that's also very important.
And time is a treasure itself, and there's only so many hours in the day and so many days in the week. So we deeply appreciate what all of you guys do. And let me ask you, JB, it's a hard question, so maybe pick a couple. What are some of your proudest moments when you were chair of the school board?
On the way out, I also termed out. Well, I was terming out, but they kept me on for an extra year because my son was then going to be a
Yeah,
freshman back
yeah,
in 2017. So I stayed an
yeah.
extra year beyond my term, and then I came out. And some of the things that we did organizationally in the board, we created a technology committee. You know, how important is technology in education today? And we did not have any representation there. So that was a committee that was created that, you know, myself and our executive committee put together. The school life committee, let's focus on the culture. Let's focus on, do the teachers have representation? You know, do we hear from them? That is one of the objectives of that committee. And it was also my catch-all committee, because whenever you had something, does the board really need to get involved in this? Give it a school life. Doug Sawyer was a school life committee lady. He was like, I hate my job. Give them all the tough things, you know? But creating that structure, increasing the size of the board. We were having, when I left, there were some gaps, and adding some incredible school board members throughout the years, like Lou de la Aguilera, who went on, you know, put him immediately in charge of marketing, and he went on to do all of that. Patrick Dyer with technology, George, now I'm drawing a blank, but just the creation of all of that. And then helping, one of the major issues right before I came in, I went into some of the influential alumni that were also parents, Robert Sanchez, George Moss, and so forth. And one of the areas that they were not happy with, and, you know, this is almost 10 years ago now, was guidance. They were not happy. They were not happy with what was going on in that world. And that was, and slowly we started, what can we do about this? What can we do? And it became number one, acknowledging that we're not doing the best job there that we can. And it slowly started moving, and look at it now. And then Marcus Lemonis, with, you know, the guidance today to what it was 10 years ago is night and day.
Night and day. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. You had to step off because your first son came to Columbus. And again, we were talking earlier, I never got to experience this because I have daughters. What's it like? What's it feel like to have your sons go to Columbus and experience what you experienced with many of the same people that you experienced with, but with the diversity of activities and options at Columbus that you and I did not have? Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it's the activities, the amount of the number of options that a student has is amazing. And it could be for extracurricular activities. It could be for service projects. It could be obviously sports. That's, you know, everything that's there. And then the many, many clubs. I wanted them to be a part of everything, which is impossible. You know, they had gone to the summer camps for CCNN. And I was hoping that neither one of them ended up being involved in CCNN. My oldest was on its freshman year, but didn't gravitate to it. But, you know, everything that's there, and you just want them to be involved in everything. And that was one of the things that I probably learned from my first and my second, is I was always pushing, hey, why don't you get involved with this? Do you like that? And you could just see them going, Dad, I can't do all of that. You know, so but the opportunity, and then to see them, my oldest son, Jake, he's a musician, guitar, but he was very quiet. We came from Miami Beach, so there was nobody. We didn't know anybody. Weren't like all the Epiphany and St. Teresa, he knew, along with my younger son, Evan, they both knew one or two students coming in, so they didn't really know anybody. So to see them slowly develop their network of friends, and Jake, my oldest, by the time he leaves, he's up there in Florida now, and there are 4 roommates, and 3 of them are Columbus. 3 out of the 4 are Columbus, and they're great people, great friends, great families. I mean, it's just a good fit together. And then now my youngest is going through the same the same thing, but he's a baseball player, and he's a pitcher on the baseball team. And you don't want to wish this on any father, but that's where we are.
I think, yeah, a little easier to deal with the music program.
Music is easy, you know. Oh, you missed you're right. You missed a chord here. I didn't even notice it. It was great. The other one, oh, they hit a home run off of you. Well, great.
No, but you know what? They both benefit. I mean, and Jake's a hell of a guitar player. I mean, he is. He is. So the music program we have, the baseball program we have, we didn't even really have a music program when we were in school per se. And, you know, the baseball field still had choral rock on it.
Right.
So, I mean, we've come so far. It's just amazing. And once again, it's because of our alumni. Yes. And our alumni who choose to send their kids to school. You guys, and I remember this well, making that schlep from Miami Beach to Columbus every day. You really got to want to go to Columbus to do that.
It just ended for me 2 days ago. So, we had some gaps in between, but my wife would mostly take them in the morning, and she did that for 2 years with Jake before he could drive his junior year. And then back then I had my mother would pick them up. I just didn't have the time. But then Evan comes in and goes to school, and the first year his brother takes him and brings him back. But he had baseball, so most of the time I was driving him back. And he just turned 16 and got his car Tuesday. Wednesday he drove to school, and that was my last schlep to Miami Beach, to use a Miami Beach term.
Exactly.
So that's amazing. And yes, it's hard and it's difficult, but it's a no-brainer. You just do it.
No-brainer.
It's the right decision.
You do it. Your family history is quite interesting. And Columbus is like Miami. We're a small town disguised as a big city. Abel Sanchez, our good mutual friend, has his Instagram page, Miami Stadium, which is one of the great. Abel's been on the podcast. One of the greatest sources of history for Miami. He bases it on Miami Stadium. He covers everything. But and certain of us, are of an age that we remember Miami Stadium, remember it very well. Tell us about your family connection to Miami Stadium.
Right. Absolutely. And Abel is, I agree, what a historian. I mean, what he does and the content that he puts up, the time he spends on it, it's amazing. I learn something almost every day.
Yeah, man.
It's something that, maybe I knew 90% of the story and gave me the last 10%, or something I had no idea. So it's really amazing what he does, and have him as an explorer and be part of that family. That's great. But yes, my grandfather decided many in late 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
The story goes a little bit like this. I don't know how to. It's my father had asked him for a glove when he was a little kid, and they weren't in a great position. And fast forward, 15 years later, and he in essence built a stadium in Miami. That was in 1949. My grandfather had already owned a lot of properties, was living in Miami. He was a senator in Cuba, but in those years he was out of the country for the most. He was in Miami Beach, actually.
Okay.
Both my boys went to a Montessori school right across from the homes that were, one was my father's and one was my grandfather's. That's cool. Amazing. And that's a coincidence. That's a complete, I live in Miami Beach for a number of reasons that has nothing to do with my family. My grandfather decides to build this stadium. They do a trade on what is the Miami-Dade Convention Center over there on 7th Street. He owned that land.
Yeah.
And he did a trade with what ended up being Miami Stadium in Allapattah for that land, and built the stadium within a year. He then he then is stricken with leukemia. So he really never got to see. He was alive when the stadium, when the inaugural game of the stadium was played, but he was in the hospital and so forth. So on opening day, the owner of the stadium and the team at the time, the Miami Sun Sox, was my 17-year-old father. So he was all of a sudden, somebody who's just out of high school. And you own a stadium. He had the Abel loves talking about this. He had the commissioner of Major League Baseball along with the commissioners of the two leagues there with him, and he's pictured, and he's 17 years old, all of 5'8". It's crazy. Yeah. So, and then he sold the stadium about 10 years later. It was, it was not a moneymaker by any means. But when the stadium was brought down, I think it was 1999 or 2001.
2000, yeah.
2000. Okay. Then Rolando Yanes, whose son is also a Columbus explorer, was an architect that took a lot of, just loved the stadium for its architecture and the cantilevered roofs and so forth. And he brought it back to life, him and director Joe Cardona, with a story about the stadium and my family, specifically, mostly my father, and called White Elephant. And during that, when that movie came out, I got so many people talk to me about their memories of the stadium and, the concerts as much, as much the games as the concerts, and just the stories that came out. And a lot of those guys from the 70s and 80s.
Some of the greatest experiences of my life as a teenager were at Miami Stadium. And go figure, it's all connected to Columbus. It's awesome.
It is, absolutely.
Your wife has a very interesting career.
And name,
right? You can explain that. What's it like being married to a politician and dealing with that?
Well, that was different. So she was always in business. It's just her career. She worked, actually, funnily enough, she worked directly for both two out of the Columbus Fortune 500 CEOs. She worked directly for Robert Sanchez for many, many years. And she worked for Jose Mas as his CIO back around 2009. And then she decided we decided to have her stay home with the kids more and so forth. But then that type A personality just doesn't stop there, right? So she, of course, joins the PTA. The next year, she's the PTA president. She's the Miami-Dade PTA president of the year. And she just loves it. And then the community started saying, "Why don't you do this for the city?" She had never had any idea or thought about going into politics. And because I had always been involved, really through my business, government was my end client in much of the work that we did at Meridian Partners. I knew it and got involved, and I had a natural affinity to it. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, grandfather, and father were all involved. They steered me away from it, but as soon as I got back for business reasons, I gravitated to it. I enjoyed it. I probably should have had a career in that. But then when my wife is being asked to do it, I said, "We can do this. I can help you. Let's get this done." And it wasn't a year, but it was about 10 months of the hardest work for her. And for me, she took it serious. She was knocking on doors. She would come in on a Sunday, knocking on doors all day. She'd come in about 6:30, and I'd say, "All right, you're done. You're done for the day." And she said, No. There's about an hour of sunlight left. I'm just going to come back, get a yogurt, a drink, and she'd go till sundown. Wow. And she won by 77 votes out of 11,000. So she needed.
Well, it was that extra hour.
Every one of those extra hours. That was it. And then she was a commissioner for 4 years. Really enjoyed getting things done and working, for the community. She did it for all the right reasons, not for any other reason, not for even a political career and so forth. But she really enjoyed that. You asked was it like being the spouse of, and that's difficult because you're getting, the moment you decide to run, you're corrupt. You haven't even done anything, and you're the world's worst person, and it's on the social media, and it's everywhere, and so that part of it is difficult. You ignore that noise, and you don't give it any air. So in other words, you just let it burn out, unless of course you have to deal with it. And then the other thing is just being in a restaurant, and you're there with the family, the kids, and folks will just literally pull up a chair and start telling you about, whatever problem it is that they want. And there's sometimes we'd have to go off the beach to have a quiet, but the pleasure that she and me indirectly got out of that and helping the community, that was amazing. Finally, after 4 years, it's 24/7, very thankless, and especially thankless in the pocketbook, because the salaries are $6,000 a year. And if it goes to vote to increase the salary, everybody says, no, a bunch of politicians, we're not going to increase the salary. So sometimes you get what you pay for. And, and that's it's truth. You either have to be rich to run or not be in a very good place doing the right things, but that was the perspective of that, and being able to see that was very different. And I enjoyed it very much. She's now back in the professional world, working for Jacobs Engineering. She just had a cleanup with Columbus, Jacobs Engineering in Columbus, beach cleanup.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, you have to be very proud of John. She did an amazing job, and I don't envy you. It's one thing to be the wife of a candidate. I think it's probably another thing to be the husband of a candidate or an elected official, because it can get ugly and it can get very personal. That can't be easy, bro.
For the most part, I kept my cool, but on a couple of occasions, I would maybe be on social media, and then I call her and I say, hey, I just want to let you know I got a little carried away. She'd go, okay, stay off social media, stay off the rest of the day. Don't get on there, because I may have gotten into it with somebody and who maybe it was better not to.
Easier said than done, though.
Yes.
Something that's close to both of us, Columbus Connects. It has developed over the years. The myriad guests that you have arranged, and you started it, you stepped away for a little while, you're back heavily involved with Columbus Connects. You got to be very proud of it, and we got a great season coming ahead.
Yeah,
talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's a testament to Columbus, really, because to have the quality of speakers that we have to choose from for maybe 14, 15 years now, it's amazing. And sometimes I'd set up the event, and you're months in advance. You pick a day, and then it turns out to be the Miami Heat is playing a playoff game that night, and you're like, oh no! It was not only the attendance may not be what you expected, but I want to watch the Heat game, right? So all of a sudden I'm there, and on a couple of occasions that actually happened. I went to the event, and whoever was speaking, once I finished, was, being here was a lot more valuable than watching a basketball game, no matter what. So, but that's a testament to the quality of our alumni. So many different facets. It's, we've done government, business, the business panel, the Fortune 500, the CEOs, which now we have 4, with Marcus Lemonis joining the group, Carlos Rodriguez, ADP, Robert Sanchez, writer, and Jose Mas, and George Mas, as CEO and chair of Mastech. Into Miami, we've had sports heroes. We have Orestes Destrade. We've had John Jay. In a few months, as I mentioned, we'll have the triumvirate on the football side. We had Eddie Alvarez, dual medalist, and we had Eddie Alvarez twice. We had it after he won the first medal. We had him after he won a second medal in 2 different Olympics. Then scientists like the regenerative medicine from Wake Forest. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but that was amazing. That was an amazing. General Victor Renyart was the commander of NORAD when he came in.
General,
the general. He gave. They told me that he the airport went through presidential protocol when he flies in. You shut everything down, and he was Columbus class of '67 general, 4-star general when he came in. So we've had Navy SEALs, de Peralta. And that's part of what we want to do. We always want to touch on different areas. And next week we're having an amazing one. And thank you for, you're going to be moderating that panel. Boy, you're going to be with two smart guys there in John Coriel, who is the sitting Florida Supreme Court Justice, and Raul Cantero, who was a Florida Supreme Court Justice in the 2000s, both Columbus guys, 78 and 96 respectively. And amazing to be able to have those two on the same panel. We've looked back and we can't verify the history, but we don't not think any school in the state of Florida has had more than 2 Supreme Court justices. And we have two of them that you'll be moderating next week. They're going to be coming on campus. So that's amazing. We have our Fortune 500 CEOs. We have our Supreme Court justices. We just keep winning, baby.
It is representative of who we are.
Yes.
And we, excel in everything. And, JB, you talked about time and treasure and everything earlier. The bottom line is you've been a very generous man to Columbus High School. What's your reason for giving and continuing to give to your high school? Because so many people were different, man. People leave high school and that's it. They don't look back. We don't want to let go of high school. Why do you give? Why do you care so much, JB?
When I first was involved on the alumni board, first started the Columbus Connect, I would get folks would ask me, why do you do this? Why do you spend so much time? Oh, it must be because you're trying to get your kids into Columbus. Wow. This was 10 years before they were going to Columbus. I go, you think I'm thinking that far ahead? There's always, I go back to my time there and what Columbus did for me. With, as I mentioned, the brothers, and that was so special to make sure that I was taken care of. That senior year and losing my father, but then the friendships that came out of it, and you've always had them, and you're always there. They're always there, and that the quality of those individuals, and some may be a little crazy, and some may be a little, but deep down, they're very good people, and that came at least in part from Columbus. So I just enjoy being, we all enjoy being part of our groups. I love being a Columbus Explorer. I love it. I loved it back then. I love it today. I'll love it in many years. I try to be, a lot of folks that aren't Columbus will be like, well, you're always talking about Columbus and you're always, saying, talking about the many accomplishments and so forth. And I said, well, when somebody comes and asks me about their son going to a school, the answer isn't necessarily Columbus for everybody. And there's many reasons, and I could say great things about a lot of schools like Palmer, Ransom, that other school. I will never, I'll have fun on a football field or talking trash, but not in reality. I respect that too much, but I will say you have to allow me now to speak about Columbus. And let me talk to you about the Silver Knights. And let me talk to you about the National Merit Scholars. Let me talk to you about the debate team. All those things, everybody knows about the sports teams, but not everybody knows about the incredible academics and everything that we do. So I'm proud of just being part of that. And I'm proud to have done what I could throughout these years and to help that. Probably, you mentioned the Hall of Fame. I'm very proud to be on that wall next to people like you and, and everybody, to be part of that, be part of the Hall of Fame. It shows it gave, not for any accolades. It's just to, because it's a recognition for what you have done along with so many others to make this the school that it is today. And it's beyond a school.
Exactly. And I don't like to speak for people, JB, but I can tell you this based on experience, that Tom and Dave and Chris and myself, you were one guy we knew we could count on any time of day or night to be there, not just for us, but for Columbus. And for that, on behalf of everybody, I say thank you for your years of service. I hope they continue for a long time. I look forward to more Columbus Connects, and I've truly enjoyed this. And, you talk about learning things. I learned a lot today. So thank you, my brother. Thank you.
And thank you for those words. That got me a little bit clumped there. Tom, David, you, Chris, Juan, everybody, Pedro, the whole administration. I just admire you along with all the other teachers, what you have done for these students throughout the years. The payback may not always be great in the pocketbook, but boy, what you get deep in here, and those folks. To add a little bit more, on Columbus Connects, when you have somebody that comes in from out of town, they'll ask me, "Hey, is so-and-so teacher so there? Can you make sure that they get there, or can I get to meet them, or speak to them before?" And whoever they are, they have somebody, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teachers that they remember as how important it was for them. And you all, like that, from your end, you have hundreds, if not thousands, that you've impacted like that. So
we all stand on shoulders of giants, don't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Really do.
Absolutely.
So thank you again, my friend. It was a great honor. And I will see you next week with Mr. Coriel and then Mr. Quintero, both of whom I know very well in different ways.
So yes, absolutely.
It's going to be a great night.
October 13th, please join us if you get there. RSVP and join us, please.
Please do. So, Explore Nation, I hope you've enjoyed this insightful looking back with Lynskey with JB Aleman. Many, many more great guests ahead. As always, thanks to Melissa Marty. She makes this whole thing happen. I just show up. She does the hard work. We appreciate it. And JB, once again, thank you, my brother, and adelante.
Thank you, John. Adelante.